Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. Today we are in episode number 183, and we have a very interesting personal topic we're going to be talking to you guys about because I just sold my house and I moved 2 weeks ago. And David Korman, oh my goodness, is it ever a pain in the behind? And I'm still living on boxes and sometimes it's just shocking. Our industry, doesn't quite understand or remember or know how painful it is to go through this experience. So we wanted to, really dedicate this podcast episode and just give everybody a little bit of a reminder of what it takes to move and, just how difficult it is. And this is what we're putting our clients through each and every single day.
Yeah, that's why I thought this would be a great discussion because, I went through it about 12 years ago after not having moved myself for 25 years. And it opened my eyes when I went through it. When you're buying and selling and getting a new mortgage and doing all that, um, about what the process is really like. I got a completely different appreciation for what buyers and sellers go through, a different appreciation for my realtor, a different appreciation for what a realtor does, for what a home inspector does, for a mortgage broker does. When you go through it on a personal level, it's eye-opening. So, and I think I became a better lawyer and more sensitive to so many things because of it. Because it's a physically demanding process, packing and moving and sorting through all your crap and staging your house and doing all that. And it's a stressful process too. There's so many aspects to it. And sometimes, when we're in the businesses that you and I are in, David, you're doing it, on the realtor side, I'm doing it on the lawyer side, closing transactions. But it becomes, widgets to some extent. And we have to remind ourselves that when you're actually living through the purchase and sale process, it's hard. And you rely on your professionals to do their job and help you through it and take some of that pressure and stress off. And I know from, now that you've had to go through it, it's tough, right? It's really tough. And you think, well, you know the process, but when you're the one living through the boxes and the messes and everything else, I think you see it from a different point of view.
And you have to see it from a different point of view because um as a realtor, we're really in the service industry. We're here to provide a service to our clients. So it's really eye-opening to go through this yourself. And as a realtor, I think you have to strive to make this process as easy, as painless, as effortless as possible for your clients. And David, going through it myself, it just really reminded me how tedious this process is. And it starts, as soon as your house is sold, you have to pack up your life. You got to declutter. You got to go through boxes. And, I had boxes in my basement that I haven't unpacked from my last move. And I decided
And
that
how
this
long
time
ago was that?
around, sorry,
How long ago was that last move?
it was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So my last house, I moved in 2016, and then I moved in 2013, and then I moved again in 2025.
Yeah.
Sorry, 2016, 2023, and 2025.
Yeah.
But I had boxes in my basement that I didn't even touch from the last
Right.
move.
Right.
So there was so much purging, and it constant work. And then on the moving day, it was like a 14-hour day. Hired a professional moving company. I was there every step of the way. And, it's been 2 weeks and I'm still living on boxes,
Right.
and not to mention new neighbors, um, new circumstances. I was on the phone with, the utility company today because, I got a notice that I have to change utilities, but, your office was really great. You guys, after calling in, I already found out that you guys notified them, but always something, all these little things, I'm changing my CRA address, my bank account address, my credit cards, you know, always remembering something else. Oh, I have to do
Right.
this. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I have to, you know, stay on top of this. So, you know, as a realtor, if you can create checklists, if you can create systems, if you can create processes, if you can really be there and guide your clients, that's where the value is. You know, your job is not done on moving date, on closing date as a realtor. I think the successful realtors that build relationships, that get the referrals, they're the ones that stay in contact with their clients. They're the ones that guide their clients to this. They're the ones that make it a little bit easier. Now, we have a realtor here at the brokerage, and they offer a done-for-you packing and unpacking and moving service as part of their, you know, full service to their clients. So if you use them, they will actually pay for a company to come pack everything, move you, and unpack you on the new house. You know, there's
Right.
value there. As somebody that just moved, oh my God, if a realtor offered me that kind of service, I think I would be more than happy to pay them the full 5% commission because, you know, the value that they're bringing to the table is so immense. And think about it from my point of view, from the consumer's point of view, how much easier that makes my life in this whole process, right?
Yeah.
So there's things you can do as a realtor that can, you know, really go above and beyond and really help your clients alleviate and make this process a lot easier.
Well, one thing I want to bring up because we haven't mentioned it yet for the viewers, listeners watching this about the process you went through. You ended up buying and selling on the same day. Okay. And that creates a whole different level of pressure, anxiety, stresses, everything else. Aside from the physical difficulty of doing it all in a day, right? So having gone through that, buying and selling the same thing, and we do those all the time. It's not like you can't do them, and we do them. Would you advise most of your clients, if you're as a realtor, like, is that a good thing to do, or are you better off if you could put a day or two in between it? If you could do it again, which way would you choose to do it?
No, I think the smarter decision is to bridge and to give yourself a little bit more time. It was extremely difficult, and you know, I like challenges, and I thought I could really execute this at a high level and make this work. And you know, by and large, we did, but it came at a big cost. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't advise anybody to go through that on the same day. However, you know what? We did it, and it's behind us, and um, I can honestly say that the house that I moved into is um, everything I wanted. And I don't see myself moving for a really long time. So
Yeah.
I don't predict a move in the next 2 years. I think this is going to be the house for a really, really long time. And I'm really looking forward to it, David.
Well, that's great. We've talked about buying and selling the same day before in other episodes. I've done uh, seminars and webinars in your office about it because it's difficult. And as a lawyer, if we get the opportunity, and most times we don't in the negotiation process because it's really, the realtors that sometimes we don't know, the agreements are signed more often than not before we even get to look at them. And they've already chosen to close on the same day, or they've made the decision to spread it apart. But the advice that we're giving to realtors all the time is if you can avoid same day closing, do it. And the simple reason is there's certain things that are just out of our control. Like we help you, we do what we can, we bend over backwards as much as we can to try and get it all done in a timely fashion. But we don't, as lawyers closing a transaction, we don't have full control.
Right,
Okay. We cannot complete your purchase until we get the sale funds.
right,
We don't have control over exactly when we're going to get those sale funds. You as a buyer, you want to get your sale done. You want to get your old mortgage paid off. You don't want to incur interest, because it's not paid off by a certain time, and the lenders all impose a deadline. If we don't get the money by 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., then we're charging you another day's interest. So nobody wants to pay that interest when it's their own money, but we don't have control over that because the lawyer doesn't have to give us the money by 2 o'clock. They can close at 5 to 5 if they want, right? And still and comply with their agreement. So we don't have full control. So that's why, when we can, we're always making that recommendation of not closing same day. If you can get bridge fund, if you know, not everybody can get a bridge fund, but it's available a lot at a really low cost. It's really inexpensive money. If you're getting a bridge loan for a couple days, interest rates are so low, it's really inexpensive. And that gives you some insurance and protection. What if your buyer can't get their money that day just because they ran
Right.
into an underwriting issue and they just can't? They just need a day's extension, but you have to close your purchase that day, and you don't have the sale proceeds, right? So whenever we do close a same day closing these days, especially September 2025, with all the pressures on the lenders and the underwriting condition and appraisal issues, sometimes I feel like we got lucky. We managed to close the same day, and nobody wants to leave it down to luck, right? But it is luck to a certain degree because there's so many aspects that are out of our control, and we don't want clients to be frustrated. We didn't want you to be frustrated. I know you said, oh no, we got to get sale proceeds to my lender so I don't incur per diem interest. Well, we don't have the money, right? We'd love to do that. We'd love to save you the money, but we don't have the money. We're waiting for the money, right? So it's a frustrating process for everybody, that way, right? So, the good news, it got done, right? When it gets done, it's great. If you can close the same day and it all gets done, it works to your benefit, right? But it's hard.
David, you guys did a great job. Dealing with your law clerks in your office is always first class. And I don't think it's luck. I think it's having the right team. I think it starts with putting the listing on the market and attracting the right buyer, making sure you're vetting the right buyer, making sure you have the right deposit, making sure you have a rock solid relationship with the co-op agent that brings you the offer, making sure you ask the right questions. It's a whole process that starts, literally from day one because if you don't stage your house, if it doesn't look 100%, if it's not priced properly, if it's not in the right, if the package and the marketing is not done correctly and you're attracting the wrong client, then that's where there's cracks in the armor that are starting from day one. And we've talked about this, for 183 episodes, right?
Right.
And the advice that we give people. But so I'm really happy with how everything turned out. Would I do it again? I don't think I would. I think I would bridge and I think I would just give myself a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to prove to myself that I can do it, and I wanted to prove it to myself that I can execute at a really high level, and
Yeah.
it was a great experience. But again, it reminds me of what working with home buyers and home sellers is like, and what our industry
Right.
goes through each and every single day. And we have
Right.
to remain vigilant as the professionals that we are, right? And the other thing I want to talk about, David, is like there is a buyer and a seller out there that is not living on boxes. And it's something that our industry doesn't talk about enough. And that is the investor client, right? And as a professional, it is so much easier and smarter to deal with the investor client that is looking at real estate as a tool to build wealth, and they're not putting their own family and themselves through the hassle of actually moving, right? And our industry does not pay attention to this type of buyer or seller enough. And it's something I'm very passionate about. I started the Real Estate Investment Institute a couple of years ago where we teach realtors how to build wealth, how to work with investor clients. And I wrote a really big blog article on this a week after I moved. And I reminded everybody like, yeah, working with home buyers and home sellers is really straightforward in a lot of respect, but there is a more sophisticated client out there that is easier to deal with, that is not emotional, that is always looking for opportunity, that is looking to do multiple transactions a year, um, and is not moving themselves, is not putting themselves through the ordeal and through the stress and through the um, uh, uh, pain of moving. Because let me tell you, no matter how good of a job you do as a realtor, at some point your client's going to be like, holy shit, I can't believe I went through this. This wasn't a great experience, no matter
Right.
how good of a realtor you are. Like it's still, a pretty bad experience. I wouldn't wish that moving on my worst enemy, right? And it's something that we as an industry uh, lead our clients to do each and every single day. So if you're a realtor out there, I challenge you, like there's a easier way, there's a smarter way of building your business. And it's working with investor clients. And the other thing I'm going to say, David, is I know this is a bit of topic, but realtors need to start building their own portfolio of investment properties too, right? So get educated, really embrace the concept of maybe working with investor clients, and it is a smarter and better way of building your business.
Yeah, no, that's all good. And I think everybody should, check out your article or your blog on that as well. Just back to your own experience a little, because I know one of the holy shit moments you had in the process. Okay. And you're a seasoned veteran realtor, owner, broker, like, you know what people go through. And you know that I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a very high percentage of any property for sale these days is staged, right? You're buying it when it looks its absolute best. When the curb appeal is there, everything is staged, the clutter is gone for the most part, right? And I assume the property you bought was like that. Then you go in at some
No, I
point
had, David, I had
for a
wood
visit.
paneling in the house that I bought, and I had vinyl flooring and electric baseboard heating. So those are the three things where I'm like, as an investor, as somebody who looks at future value and future property appreciation, I was like, cha-ching, 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 right? So
Right.
I sold my property fully staged and at the very top of the market. I got very fortunate, but I also bought at the very bottom of the market, quite the opposite of where I sold. So, my what I wanted to do is I wanted to create as big of a gap between where I sold and where I bought.
Okay. But I want you to just comment a little bit. You walk in for a visit to your new property. Okay. Agreement signed, everything's done. You've had your inspection.
Yeah.
Now you're walking in for a visit and you find a mess. You describe what you found in there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look at properties all the time. I since I was 14 years old, I used to go visit open houses, and I always say to the seller, listen, don't worry about the condition. I can look past that, right? But when you buy a property and you go and revisit it for the first time, and you feel like, hey, this property is mine because you have an interest in that property. Closing date is coming up. It's going to be your house one day, and you walk in and there's dirty dishes everywhere. There's dirty underwear on the floor. The pool is green, and you just think to yourself, like, wow, if they're not maintaining this property, what state is it going to get to in the next 30 to 60 days before closing date? And it just, as a buyer, gives you a really negative experience, which is what I went through. But I brought it to
Right.
the attention of my team, and it was addressed. And I have to say that the people did a really great job of cleaning everything up, and the house looked really good when I went there again. I was really, really happy. But yeah, there is we're all human. We're all emotional. We have feelings, and um, it was quite a negative experience.
Right. And the reason I raise it is because there's a shock that every buyer goes through when they revisit the property. Like they saw it at the absolute best, decluttered, staged. And then you walk in at another period of time, it might be a week later. It could, it's amazing how fast you can clutter up a property again.
Hmm.
And this was, if I remember correctly, it was still about a month before your closing. So so yes, the people have to move back in. They got to live there. Their stuff gets back in. They clutter it. They make a mess. And no, normally, when people know there's a visit coming, they're gonna tidy up. You'd expect at least that, clean it up a little bit. Like who wants to see their dirty laundry and stuff?
Yeah,
Like
it was
clean it up a
exactly
little bit. But they didn't, and that's not so unusual. But I'm just the point I'm making. There's a shock value to any buyer when you go back in and you see the property and oh my God. And then you start worrying if this is how they really live,
right.
you know, are they going to fix this before closing? Or if they've been living in this place for 10 years like this, maybe they haven't maintained it as well as I thought they maintained it. And what else are we going to find? And you go through all that anxiety, because of it. And I think most buyers go through a level of that of that shock when they go back to see the property. Because you're right, David, once you sign that agreement, you're the buyer. It's your property. You have a beneficial interest in that property, and they have an obligation to maintain it and keep it in decent condition until closing. And it's not like, okay, it's I sold it. I don't have to cut the grass anymore. I can let the weeds grow. I could no, you have to maintain your property, okay? Because you're not the only beneficial owner right now. You've got a buyer that's buying that property. You have a duty to keep it in the same condition as when they signed the agreement. So, I know that I'm raising this because you went through this, but all of our buyer clients go through something like that. And it's hard to accept. And the answer back is, well, we're still living here for a month. We're allowed to live here. We're allowed to have dirty laundry. We're allowed to have our dishes in the sink, and and if we're not using the pool, but we'll get it fixed up before closing because our duty is to make sure it's all in good working condition on closing, not a month before closing, right? So
Yeah.
that's not good when you're the buyer. You want to see that your sellers are doing their job and looking after the property.
Yeah. And Dave, the other thing is, in today's market, where the market is trending downwards and we're seeing, increased pressure on price, you don't want to give the buyer any reason whatsoever to not close on the transaction, right? So when the buyer is going in for the revisit, I would encourage every realtor to pick up the phone, call their sellers and say, hey, look, we have a revisit, but
Mhm.
more importantly, take 15 minutes and just make sure that the house is warm,
Right,
inviting, smells good,
right,
clean, and make it a positive experience for the buyer because in this market, you don't want to give anybody a reason not to close or not to feel a certain way or put any doubt in their mind whatsoever. You want that to be the best experience ever. You want it to be a feel-good moment and you want people to be excited about this new chapter in their life because David, if you could share with us what percentage of transactions have trouble and difficulty closing in this market, you don't want to do anything to make or to put any doubt in the minds of any of your buyers.
right. And one is, is there enough going on to actually give them the legal right not to close? Like that's sort of extreme, but you also don't want to give them a reason to say, hey, this is not in good working condition. That's broken. That's not in the same condition. We're looking for an abatement in the purchase price. We want to reopen that up. Like we'll close, but not at that price, or we want to open up that negotiation, that discussion, etc. You want to avoid that at all costs. So again, as a realtor giving advice to a buyer, you're in the business of dealing with a bunch of buyers. That buyer or that seller, rather, that may have been the first transaction they've done in 20 years, and no one, maybe their realtor didn't explain to them the process. And there's going to be a visit, and this is what you should do. Bake a bread and clean up the dishes, or get a cleaning company to come in for 3 hours and just tidy up and make it look like everything, start writing notes. Oh, I'm so excited for you to come and visit. We're going to give you some notes on how to operate this appliance, or this is, the pool is so wonderful. And this is who we use to fix the pool and maintain the pool.
Yeah.
This is how we do it. I'm leaving you some extra chemical, whatever.
100%. 100%. Like it, and you know what? If the seller's not willing to do it, then you know the listing agent should just maybe drop off a little bottle of wine or like a basket of cookies or something like uh, just make it a feel good moment. It doesn't take a lot. Like you guys are getting 2.5% on over $1 million, a lot of money. Imagine how it would make the buyer feel if they walked in and there's freshly baked cookies and hey, welcome to your new house. On behalf of the sellers, and on behalf of the listing agent, I wanted to congratulate you and welcome you to this new chapter of your home. Like to me, if I was a buyer and I walked in freshly smelled cookies and maybe a fresh pot of coffee or something small, it would just go such a long way to make that like such a great feel good experience. And it's those little things. It's the feeling that you're gonna remember at the end of the day.
Right. And if you think of it from practical terms, you're a month away from closing and you have a visit, or you're 2 weeks from closing and you have a visit, there's always going to be a mess because they're moving, right?
Sure,
So they should be clean up to the extent you can, and then you could be
sure,
apologetic. Sorry for the matter. We're
100%.
packing up. We're moving.
Yep,
We're
yep,
trying to get rid of stuff. We got different piles of crap here and there, and we're moving. So but go ahead and like get the dishes out of the sink, like do something and be apologetic. Because really the expectation from a buyer's point of view is if you walk in and it's a week before closing, you want to see there's a bunch of boxes. You want to see that they're moving out and that they're getting their stuff together and they're going to get it all out of there. So there's a give and take here, but there's a way to make the process smoother and more inviting, because there's always going to be that shock element. You walk back into a property and it doesn't look like it looked when you bought it, because it's not staged and they got all the clutter back in there. But people have to live, and it takes time, as you've now experienced again. It takes a lot of time and effort to pack stuff up and figure out what you're keeping, what you're throwing out. You make a mess, right? But while you're making that mess, you're inviting your buyers to come in and look at your mess.
yeah. But David, there's not a lot of processes or a lot of different avenues in life where you can make the kind of money that you can make by moving houses, especially when it comes to your primary residence, because it is 100% um, tax tax free, right? So
Mhm.
um, a lot of people move frequently, and it is a great way of building wealth. You do have to be, extremely vigilant, especially in a market like this, but it comes at a cost, and I'm okay with that. It's backbreaking. It's a lot of hard work, but it also has its, financial reward. So
Yeah.
if you work with the right realtor, if you work with the right team, there's a lot of there's a big upside at the end of the tunnel. So
Yeah.
um,
And I've worked with a lot of clients that have done that. Like that's just part of their game plan is, to move every 2 to 3 years, um, because they're building their equity that way in their own home. At the same time, they're trying to stay sort of like what you did, trying to stay in the same neighborhood, because they want the kids to go to the same school. They want to have access to some of the same parks and playgrounds and activities. So the kids, because if you're uprooting them and moving to a new neighborhood every 2 years, that's really disruptive if you're raising a family, right? Stay in the same neighborhood. You know where the shopping is. You know where the parks are. You've got your friends in the neighborhood. Your kids have their same. So that's important too. But if you can do that and stay in the same neighborhood, there's a big advantage of doing it that way too.
100%, 100%. All right.
Well,
So as a
I'm
realtor,
glad you survived to
I'm
talk
still
about it.
surviving, David. I'm still surviving.
Yeah. You've survived so far. It's a process. I'll tell you, I moved 12 years ago. I've still got boxes in my basement that I haven't unpacked. And this is the stuff that we thought we needed. I don't even know what's in there. But we obviously haven't needed it for 12 years. So
Yeah, well, stay vigilant out there, and stay attentive and be self-aware of what your clients are going through. And I think if you can, put some SOPs and some processes and really put yourself, be empathetic. That's the biggest thing is be empathetic and really empathize with what your clients are going through. And I think if you can do that, it's going to make you a better, stronger realtor, and you're going to be able to provide a better level of service to your clients.
I agree 100%. And the same thing applies in my industry. Like we have to know what our clients go through, part of the closing process and what they're going through, and the pain of being physically packed up in a moving van, and now you can't unpack because you're all ready to go. You started at 8 in the morning, the mover's there by 11 o'clock. You're all loaded up, and you drive over to your new house and you sit there until 6 o'clock at night because you can't unpack because you
Yep.
don't have the lock, the code to the lock
Yep.
yet, and we just can't. No one's done anything wrong, but there's a process, and sometimes it takes till 6 o'clock at night till you get that lock code,
Yeah,
right?
been there, done
And
that.
you're
Not
sitting in a
until
van for
6
a
p.m., but
whole
it felt
day.
like 6 p.m. Every
Right.
minute that passes by when that truck
Every
is
minute.
full.
Right. It's
Yeah,
hard.
it's
And
hard.
if you're lucky, it's 3 o'clock, but
Right,
sometimes it ends up being 6 o'clock. It's so
right.
hard for
It's
people to
hard.
go through. But if we can help them understand that and warn them that sometimes that happens and not in their control, it takes some of the anxiety away too.
Yeah,
No one's
yeah,
ever going to be happy when you're the one sitting in the van for 5 hours, but
right.
but it does happen. It's just part of the process.
Yeah, and a lot of it's communication, making sure you're available, making sure you're there on moving date, making sure you're accessible, and that goes a really long way to calming people down and making sure that they really understand the process and spend the time, explain it to them, be there for them, emphasize with them, and I think it's going to go a long way to making the process a lot better.
Yep.
Awesome, guys. Well, listen, thank you so
All right.
much for joining us. Hopefully, you're not moving anytime soon. But hey, if you are, share your experiences with us. Write us an email. We want to hear all about it. When is the last time you moved, and what did you do to make it as stress-free as possible? Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and join us next time on the David and David on Real Estate podcast.